Boston. This is a show I have been looking forward to for a while now because I think it is actually the first show I ever applied to, and I was able to go as an attendee while I was in college, so being able to actually table in the artist alley now was really exciting. This year, tables in the pro row cost $850. Already, this was looking to be my most expensive table yet, even more expensive than Anime Expo. But that's not all, because after processing fees and buying a badge for me and my helper because the table did not come with any, the total cost to table here was roughly $1,100. Given the high cost of the table and how competitive artist alleys are getting, I definitely wanted to make the most of this opportunity. There were 3 things I was keeping in mind while preparing for this show. 1. My table was 8 feet. 2. I am not allowed to sell stickers. And 3. Supposedly, 75% of my work should be originals. Normally I wouldn't think too hard over an 8-foot table, but this time I knew I would have to put in the work to fill a 8-foot table with mostly OC stuff. It kind of helped that I couldn't sell stickers because all of my stickers are fan art, but oh no, I guess I have to make OC merch is a crazy problem to have. I had a lot of fun revisiting all of my OCs and drawing them with my current skill level, and I had been planning to introduce more originals into my catalog over the course of this year, so this just gave me an excuse to do it earlier. In reality, the staff didn't actually ever come around to check if my table was mainly originals. I still wanted to be prepared though because the first time I ever tabled at a con, the staff came around with a clipboard and asked me and my table partner to point out which pieces were originals. Plus, I have another show later this year that is pretty strict about being mostly original, so I didn't really feel like it was a wasted effort. Next time, if I do Pro again, I think I'll be a little more generous with displaying my fan art. So here's my new merch rundown for AB. The thing I've been most excited about, new OC art book. It's 44 pages of illustrations for a road trip theme AU for 2 of my oldest OCs. I've been working on it since last August, and I'm so happy to have it in my hands now. Yes, I got white ink for them. The interior paper is so nice, it has a really nice weight in my hands and the colors printed super vibrantly. I also included a bonus Polaroid of the cover illustration with each purchase. Next I have my OC trading cards. I was inspired by my friend's OC cards, so I wanted to make some of my own. I have 9 different characters so far from my different projects, and each card has a soft touch finish with gold foil, so they're super fun to hold. This is the first time I've made merch with gold foil, and now I really get why people put foil on their things. And if you have OC cards of your own, I would love to trade sometime. I also made some OC notepads and made prints out of the illustrations I made for my personal projects. I was also able to restock some merch that I sold out of previously, like this Arknights tote bag, which ended up being super popular, so I'm very glad that I did that. This year, Anime Boston was held over Memorial Day weekend from May 23rd to 25th. AEB is infamous for its late setup hours, and I got to experience this firsthand. I had just wanted to hang out in the area around the mall, but it was raining really hard that day, so I ended up just sitting in the mall for a couple of hours after I got to Boston. Setup started at 7:30 p.m. though. I arrived closer to 8 because I got lost in the mall. Also, apparently you aren't supposed to be able to roll in handcarts or wagons over the threshold, but the security there just let me roll mine over, so I don't really know what was happening, and maybe they didn't either. I felt like my location was not too bad since I was in the front corner of my section and I wasn't facing a wall. I tried to use the outer sides of my display to display some prints that might be hard to see from the front, and I think this worked well since I saw a lot of people stop and stand on either side of my table and then come over and ask to buy it from me. I put more fan art on the side facing towards the entrance since I figured that's where most people would be heading to my table from. I also saw some artists in corner spots pull back the side curtain and put an extra table to make an L shape, which might be something to think about. Unfortunately, the lights did not quite reach the right side of my table, so my OC prints were a little dimmer than I would have liked. My fan art prints were properly lit though, which I am grateful for because that is definitely what was attracting people to my table. My smaller items on the table were also doing okay with the lighting. If I do Anime Boston again, I think I will probably invest in a lighting setup since I have a lot of prints and I think those suffered most from the poor lighting. As for my actual table setup, I kept it similar to my usual table, but just a little wider. I kept the things I wanted people to interact with close together and close to the customer, like my art books, OC cards, catalog, gacha machine, and tip jar. It was pretty easy to get people to at least flip through all of my books since they were all next to each other, and once they were done with that, they would continue through with the self-serve items. Side note, the attendees really loved the Yaoi Yuri ORV tip jars. If you have the space, I think it's worth having a fun, little interactable thing on the table. The back side of the table is not my finest work because the AB tables are really narrow, so I couldn't fit my charm boxes on them like I usually do. But we had a third chair and some small suitcases, so we were able to put the charms in between us on a makeshift table. There was a decent amount of space behind the table, mostly because the artist behind me had a backdrop that they chose to put closer to their table rather in the middle of the aisle. I was also testing out a new photo stand setup that you can fly with since my old one does not fit in a suitcase and I will have to fly to some cons later this year. Visually this changes nothing, but I just wanted to check that it would actually work before I had to fly without being able to bring a backup. After a couple hours of setting up and organizing, we drove to a friend's place to rest up for the next day. I arrived around 9 AM on Friday to finish setting up my table. We were able to take the bus and subway to the convention center, which was really nice because parking at the Prudential Center was like $46 per day. I had to rearrange some of my display prints and put out the self-serve stuff, and after that, we were ready for the doors to open at 11. This was definitely the busiest Friday I have ever experienced at a con. Right after the doors opened, it felt like non-stop sales for several hours before we got a small break in the afternoon, and then another burst of sales before the doors closed. I was participating in an Arknights stamp rally, so I got to see a lot of Arknights fans and cosplayers, which absolutely made my day. The stamp rally ended up running out of prizes partway through Saturday, so I'm glad the Arknights fans pulled through for this one. The hall closed at 9 PM and we just went right back to my friend's house because we were exhausted. If Friday was a sprint, Saturday was a very long marathon. The 11-hour day was the longest con hours I have ever done, from 10 AM to 9 PM. It was similarly busy, but overall my numbers were slightly lower than Fridays, which was kind of interesting since usually Saturdays are the big day at cons. I had more sales, but the value of each sale was lower, so the daily total ended up being less than Friday. Although sales might not have been as explosive as I would expect from a Saturday, it was still certainly more than the entire sum of what I have made at some other cons, so still a good day. As expected, Sunday was the slowest day of the event. I was finally able to go walk around the artist alley and do my shopping, though there was one last rush of sales in the early afternoon. Packing up was pretty normal, and I was very happy to see that my luggage was significantly lighter than when I started, and there was a line for the elevator to the parking garage closest to the center, but I could not find where that garage was when we drove in, so we just walked to the elevator for the farther garage and there was no line. My best sellers this weekend were by far my large prints, large print deals, charms, and charm deals. My small prints and OC cards did pretty good too, and a special shout out to the Arknights tote bag, which I had like 2 left of by the end of Sunday. I sold around 30 of each design for my best sellers, and my mid sellers were roughly in the 10 to 15 per design range. This is another Bring Everything convention, though I heard from other artists that this year was slower than last year, so I can't even imagine how busy last year would have been. This was my first time tabling with a mainly OC focused table. Despite that, the overwhelming majority of my sales were fan art, so something I want to keep working on is marketing my originals and original characters better. I think the OC trading cards were a successful experiment in adding more original merch to my table, since a lot of attendees just found the idea of OC cards itself appealing. Also because they were small and cost less than some of the other OC stuff on my table, which I'm sure helped. I've been wanting to make OC sticker sheets to have more original items at different price points, but since stickers were banned, I put that off for later. In the future, I'd like to make it more clear which prints are for my art books, since I didn't think it was very easy for attendees to make that connection. Sometimes an attendee would point at a print and then ask what it was about, and then I'd say it was from one of my books, and then they would start flipping through the book. Also, I would like to do something to encourage attendees to look at both sides of my printed catalog. I got a lot of people picking it up and pointing at the front side, but not as many people flipping it over to see the back side. For AB specifically, I think the main thing I would try to improve is, again, getting better lighting for my display, since I think that hurt the visibility of my original pieces the most. Maybe if I really wanted to fan art max, I would have redone my print display at the end of Friday, but my most popular fan art pieces were being seen enough, so I just decided to leave it. So, was the $1,000 table worth it? For me, definitely yes. My travel costs were pretty low because I was able to drive and stay at a friend's place versus having to fly and pay for lodging. I really enjoyed my brief stay in Boston, even if it rains like this sometimes. And I hope I can go back to AB next year, pro or not. All in all, it's just a fun weekend at Anime Boston. Good sales, no disasters. I got to experience the joys of having public transit and being able to walk places. And next up I have Anime Expo. I am just hoping to survive. Bye!